Carlos,
Armin,
how are
how,
you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I thought it would be a good way to start with the face of the book rather than the face of me.
You're a handsome guy, man. I would have been good either way, but thanks for the plug.
So we'll just, we have a few visitors on so far. Mare Bear and Maddie Dillon are on, so hellos to them. And we'll start right at 2:30. We're 2 minutes away. How's your day going?
It's been good. Yeah, a busy day. I've been looking forward to this all day, so I'm excited. I've actually been looking forward to it since we talked. Um,
Awesome.
but yeah, it's been pretty busy. We still have quite a few projects that we're working on for some of the partners we work with locally. So it's always plenty to do.
Very good. Are you in your office or your home?
I'm in my office. How does it sound? Because there's an AC that can be a little loud. Is it hard to hear me? Because I can adjust.
I can hear you. I think if the audience says anything, um, Tim, Mare, or Maddie, can you hear us well? Anybody else tuning in? You could. I can hear you well, so it's
Okay.
all good.
No background noise that you can tell.
Yeah, no. So let me switch this baby around, and there we go.
There
See,
he is.
the book cover is a lot better.
How you doing, man?
Good, good, very good. Uh, let me tell you, I had a really good time reading this book. It was, and it's back. You could also get it backwards too, apparently. You, no, but it's "Mommy, I Lied to God," and we're going to talk a whole lot of stuff about this book because the concept of storytelling is so significant to the business world, to nonprofits, to anybody. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, not only because you're local, a local author, but because of the subject matter too, and that we are friends and we've known each other for a long time. You did many videos for the for Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I want to get to know you a little bit more. I already know you. I want the audience to get to know you, but tell us what inspired you to go from doing the video stories to making a kind of a lack of a better way of describing it, a dummy's guide to storytelling.
Yeah, well, writing a book is always been a dream of mine, and I really have dedicated my life to telling stories, and that includes, telling my own story every opportunity that I get. I've been really lucky to do a lot of workshops on storytelling, and it's always a really good balance of personal experience and professional experience. And so, I've had a chance over 18 years now to interview well over 1,000 people that have come from all kinds of backgrounds. And it's not just local. I've had a chance to travel to Liberia, Africa, which really inspired, key ideas. My company's shift into more of mission-driven kind of storytelling. And going to Liberia really inspired me to find ways to lend a voice to people that would otherwise really not be able to connect with a broader audience. And in Liberia, their story is that they survived a civil war that left over 200,000 people dead. And, there's all kinds of challenges with infrastructure. And, the country has really been on the rise in recent years, but they've, in recent times been hit with two major crises, not just COVID-19, but prior to COVID-19, Ebola. And
Right.
so, to go back to your original question, I really felt inspired to take all the stories that I learned and try to help individuals become better storytellers. But more important than that, acknowledge that their story is worthy, and that you really can use it to have a tremendous impact, when you can just find ways to share your own story and use it to connect with an audience.
Do you think everyone or every nonprofit has a story?
I think everybody has a story. Certainly, I think that, that's one of the key things that I talk about in the book is that, some people struggle because they maybe feel like their story isn't worthy, or they have a hard story, and they may even be ashamed of certain parts of their story. But it is, our experience, our life experience, that makes us who we are, and we already come with that. It happens before we're even born. Where our families came from, whether or not they were born here or immigrated here. Your family was in the military. Whether or not they pursued an education or they didn't. All of those are things that sort of make up who we are. And it's no different for organizations. Organizations serve people. And there's whether you're a business or a nonprofit, you're still in the business of serving people. And there's a reason why you got into the line of work that you did. There's something that makes you unique. And it's about, really being intentional about, finding those things, simplifying your message, and then just sharing them with people who you think will care about it.
Do you find that the organizations or people, because sometimes the organizations are easier to tell a story, the food bank, Haven for Hope, their stories seem to be already on people's minds. Do you find the challenge of nonprofits or organizations who don't have the catchy name and the brand? How do you approach those organizations who people may not know about, and it's really hard for them to dig in deep and to share their story?
Yeah, so I think depending on the organization size, you're going to have unique challenges. The food bank has unique challenges. They have the brand recognition, but they also have the unique challenge of being so big that as an organization, it can be difficult to distill the amount of people that they serve into just one story that connects, right? So they serve 58,000 people a week, and it's a huge number. But for them, it may just be how do you get people to feel something about the need that exists, and you do that through individual stories. And so there are organizations that are smaller that don't have that same recognition. And what I would say is you really can't afford to be the best kept secret. Every organization has to raise money, and they have to build awareness around the work that they're doing. And I think the thing that I advise some of the organizations that we serve that are smaller is that you can't be everything to everyone. And so you have to really focus on who your target audience is and connect with those people who really care about the work that you're doing. And just accept that there's gonna be a percentage of the population that's never going to be inspired by the work that they do, because there's something else that maybe connects more with that person, and that's okay. Support what you're doing, and I would venture to say that if you can tap into some personal experience that somebody has, and it connects to services that you're providing, and they can relate to who you serve, those are the people that you want to get behind your organization.
Let's dive into you've already mentioned some themes in from your book, but let's dive into a little bit more. I mean, you hit on a lot of very important things that as I read it, I was also thinking it could really, it could also be something for someone who wants to have self growth too, not necessarily, being authentic, and aiming for the heart. Uh, I mean, you hit on some things that are, they seem like they're no brainers, but it's very hard for people to do, right? Much less organizations.
Yeah, it can be. I think that what we have to recognize is that at different points in our life, we all have to be storytellers if we're going to get people to move in a certain direction, right? And that's, whether you're applying to get into a school that you really have been wanting to get into your entire life, or you're applying for a job, or you're asking for a second date, right? Like there's something it's about communicating, and it's about connecting. And so it really is a good balance in the book of, giving some anecdotes that an individual can use with their own personal journey, but balanced, really well with organizations and what organizations have to do to get people behind what they do.
One of the biggest things, Carlos, that people have always said is when you speak, you have to know your audience. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes it's easier. Um, I don't want to give out the punchline, so I'll let you lead it with your experience in presenting to the eighth graders.
Well, you have to bring up the most painful part of arguably maybe one of the most painful experiences that I had. Yeah, so there's a chapter in the book that just really talks about how important it is to know your audience, and to find ways that you can connect with them, right? So I had an experience where I was asked to present in front of a friend of mine's eighth grade. They were graduating from eighth grade, and I was like the motivational speaker, right? And a lot of what I talk about, and so I have a background in doing stand-up comedy, and my material, a lot of it was about a divorce that I went through, and so it's the target audience arguably is a little older for some of the material that I used to have, right? So I thought I'd go in there and just tell a few jokes, and I was like riding on a high. And I had just done a Pecha talk, one of those like really like short 7-minute storytelling talks, and so I figured I'll just do that. I just did it. It was top of mind. It went really well, and I went in there, and they like had no emotion, and that there was like just silence. It was like a comedian's nightmare. And I talk about it in the book. And the thing about eighth graders is that there's a comedian that talks about, I really hate teenagers because they have a tendency of being real honest with their feedback, and like focusing on that thing you're most sensitive about, and then just like going right there, right? And they're like really accurate. And so the mistake that I made was just that I didn't really think about, okay, this is an eighth grade audience. They're eating their spaghetti lunch. They don't care about me or what I have to say. So, what ways can I make it interesting to them? So it quickly like escalated into like a browner version of the Chris Farley character, like Van Down by the River, talk. And so it was a good lesson, because I've communicated to teenagers before, and the thing about teenagers is they're really after authenticity. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to try to be cooler than you are. They just want to know that you care. And so it's just important to understand that the aspects of your story and what makes you authentic doesn't have to change, but you can still find ways to, think about what is it about your story that's going to connect with that specific audience, right? And your audience does change from time to time. And so it's important to do that.
That's funny. It reminds me of, I did when you go in and you talk about your career day. That's what it's called, for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I did all my spiel about Big Brothers Big Sisters. Not as bad as what you experienced, but they were second graders. And I did my spiel and I ended it. And I looked around and I said, "Do you guys have any questions?" And this little girl raises her hand and she goes, "Yes, I have 4 brothers and sisters." I'm like, "Oh, okay, good." And then the hands start going up, and I'm like, "Oh, this is great." And then I have a brother too, but I have a stepbrother. It was pretty funny. You really open yourself up, and kind of like with your comedy, you make yourself vulnerable, and you do the same thing with your book. You don't really shy away from poking fun at yourself. And talk a little bit about vulnerability and the importance of that, and exposing yourself. And then I have a question about a passage in the book, if that I think resonates well with the storyline.
Yeah. So, I think that it is really important as a life journey to, find moments where you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and know that, when you think about your story, if you've lived as long as we have, but even if you haven't, you may still be, you may be a young person, depending, on, what's happened to you. There's still highs and lows, right? It's a part of all of our journey. And that when you can get to a point and just share a very authentic part of your story, you're really giving a gift to your audience. At worst, they're going to know something about you that they didn't know, and maybe empathize with your story a little bit more. But at best, there's something in your story that will make them think of their own. And it's those moments of allowing yourself to be vulnerable and sharing a story that's hard, that often are what really move people. There's a quote that I love by John Cotter in a book called Sense of Urgency, and he's talking about Martin Luther King when he was on Washington Mall. He didn't combat racism or inequality, by going up in front of an audience and saying, "Hey, everybody, I have a strategic plan.
Right.
I've got these PowerPoint slides.
Right.
The statistics show that this is bad for our country," right? What did he do? He went up and he told a story. He shared that he had a dream that the world could be, different than the way that it was. And he challenged people to think of their own ideals and the contradictions, that existed, and how society was treating Americans that make up such a large percentage of citizens, and how it contradicted their religious beliefs, and so and I think that it's true that when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and your story is real and it's authentic, it lends credibility, because you've been through it, right? You've survived it. And that's what I love about the kind of stories that we get to tell, is that, oftentimes it's people who have experienced some of the most difficult things that you can experience as a human. But the fact that they're in that chair talking about it, they've flipped it. They've used the hardest thing about them, and they're using it to become a light to somebody else, right? to communicate it to an audience that can help somebody who is currently in the shoes that they were in, right? And so that to me is beautiful, and I feel like our stories, you know, don't have to be wasted, right? We don't have to, you know, the moment we decide to shine light on them, they can really light our path, as opposed to, you know, kind of fester in the dark and become sort of a hindrance to our own personal development.
You're listening to Carlos Maestas, and the book is called Mommy Lied to God. And I'm glad Key Ideas put the link in there. If you go to Amazon, you will see that the link is there. And I'm glad to see we're joined by one of our board members, John Casey, who's actually also an author. He's written a trilogy, a spy trilogy, and he's I should introduce you guys. Very talk about storytelling. He's phenomenal with not only his background but also his writing. Expanding on the vulnerabilities, I know that there's a part in there with the passage that we were talking about. Did you want to share that with people? I think it was very fascinating about the pebbles and.
Yeah. Let me. I can share kind of an excerpt from the book. I actually had.
And as you're looking for that, I really liked a few quotes. I underlined creativity balanced with authenticity. That's very important, right?
Yeah, you know, I think it's incredibly important that that what you're saying about you is true. You know, and as a storyteller, you know, it's a core value that we have, that you really can be as creative as you want, as long as what you're saying is true. We're never going to say something that's not rooted in truth, and that's just important, because people have a tendency to sniff out inauthenticity, the way that, you know, really scary 8th graders can do when you have to present in front of them.
We have Juan Antonio Flores from Port San Antonio. He's joined in. We have Danielle from Danielle, Texas. We also have the International School joining us. So International School of San Antonio, thanks for joining. We have Carlos Maestas today. Do you want to just read it, or do you have a?
Yeah, I can. I'll just go through it. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So this is really focused on kind of this idea of us all having a story. And so I'll just start. My dad was pretty big on taking us outside. One of my favorite memories of growing up was walking to the green belt near our house and exploring the winding dirt trails that led to the American River. Our ritual was to look for the best walking stick and collect an assortment of the fire-colored leaves that fell from a canopy of scarlet oak trees. We would walk through the river and back to our house from the neighborhood nearby. I remember returning from one of our walks, and as my dad was taking off his tennis shoe, I noticed a circular scar near his ankle. "How did you get that scar?" I asked. "I got it when I was young," he said. "I went outside to play, and I had a rock stuck in my shoe." "Oh, okay. Why didn't you just take it out?" I asked. "I don't know. I guess I was just stubborn," he added. That's my dad. I didn't think much about the story when I was little, but as I got older, I began to see it as a cautionary tale. We all tend to hang on to the things that hurt us a little longer than we should. Holding on to something until it scars us is a dangerous thing. We all have experiences in life that rock us to our foundation. We could choose to let those stories develop scar tissue in the dark, or we can let them loose so they can light our path. I would never encourage anybody to share a painful story before they are ready. What and when you share your story is a personal decision and should never be forced upon anyone. The one thing I do know, though, through my own experience, is something divine happens when you share a hard story, something beyond therapeutic, perhaps a piece of ourselves that we get back, even in the midst of prodigious loss. The Bible verse John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come so that you may have life and have it to the full." I believe that there's a God who wants us to live our best life. And when we share a hard story, not only are we living our best life, but we have an opportunity to help others live theirs.
All right. Sorry, I had to, I got a call while you were doing that. That's why I paused it. I think that's so powerful, you know, it's, and you include, and your parents have been instrumental, right? You give a shout out to your mom, and they've been inspirational for many things, but specifically for writing this book.
Yeah, so my parents both grew up in really small towns. My mom's from Brownsville, Texas, and my dad is from a really little town in New Mexico called Las Vegas, New Mexico. And both of these are really poor towns. And both of them decided to pursue an education. And, you know, my mom went and got a master's degree, became an educator. She's a retired educator. She taught in Sacramento, where I grew up, high school, and then moved to San Antonio and taught elementary school here. And my dad went on to get his PhD and become a multicultural education professor. And so, you know, when I talk about our stories start before we're ever born, I know how different my life would be had they not decided to pursue the education that they did. And that's why, you know, so much of the work that we do as storytellers is around education. And, you know, I know that I'm a product of their story and their journey. And I wouldn't be where I am had they not done what they did.
And speaking of education, your wife Jen has been in education for years as a principal, and more recently, and now she's joined Key Ideas. Is it? And how many years does she teach? And was a principal?
Yeah, so she's been in education. She was at SAISD for about 18, 19 years. We about 3 years ago bought the building that we're in, and she's like, okay, we have a building now. I'm gonna join Key Ideas, and I said, but we're not hiring, and she was like, okay, you're gonna hire me, and so it was a hard transition for us, but because of so much of the work that we do is around education, it was definitely a natural fit. There are multiple reasons why Jen sort of has continued to be around education, just serving in a different capacity, and she consults with several foundations that are doing some of the most important work in San Antonio right now. She also has a podcast called Miseducation.
Yes, I was gonna. That's a separate. That could be a whole new show. Just talking to her about that.
Yeah, totally. You should.
And I'm sure HR was okay when she asked you to hire her. So
yeah, I was like, well, let me just check your references. You know, I'll just send me a resume. I'll get back with you.
Chris Bronca. I think Chris works with you, right? He's joined in. Marcy Trevino and Maria has joined us as well. So thank you all for tuning in. If you have any comments or questions for Carlos, please submit those. Or if you have any embarrassing pictures, make sure to send those to us as well.
So shout out to Chris Bronca and Stephanie Gaitan, who are we call ourselves story smiths here. And so, you know, if you've ever seen our work or you go to our website, keyideas.net, and have anything good to say about it, it's because of them. They are incredible at what they do, and they just really care a lot about the work, and they're just really great at what they do.
Well, a quick plug. I know we're talking about your book, but it directly relates to Key Ideas. I know we have, anytime we wanted to send a message out to the community, we put several videos. I don't know how many videos we did, but we did several And that, I mean, you all are very meticulous. You look, reading the book, I can look back and see the stages, you know, asking questions, being authentic and all, you know, it's like, oh, okay, we did this here and we did that here, and trying to position yourself and whatnot. So if you're interested, please make sure to contact us or Carlos about having them produce a video for you all. I really enjoyed reading personally about Mr. Rogers. You start off the book about him, and tell us why you included him, and he's kind of like the root, I guess, of storytelling for many people. Why did you choose Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, you know, it really stems from having an opportunity to watch a documentary about him. And you know, the more you learn about him, he was like the ultimate scrappy, authentic, ahead of his time storyteller. And if you grew up, you know, kind of around the time that maybe we grew up, and you watch the show, you sort of, you know, it's kind of a slow show. It's not, you know, fast paced like maybe some of the Disney shows that were on around the same time. But he was really about trusting his audience, which was a young audience, to understand, and that, you know, he understood that they could handle some really challenging topics, right? And so he didn't shy away from real issues that he would discuss in an age appropriate way on his show. And I think I like him too, because, you know, he did it with like just a really low budget compared to, you know, some of the other studios that existed around the time. And so if you go through the book, you know, there are principles throughout every chapter, and he embodies every principle when it comes to how he would connect with an audience, the consistency, sort of going through, putting his shoes on and the jacket, you know, the sweater every time, right? Like, it was the same time, and that was all by design. It was about getting his audience, kids, to feel comfortable and have something that they could instantly acknowledge just through routine, right? And he also like let his guests on his show tell the story, tell their own story, and those were things that really connected with an audience. You know, one thing that he did that was really kind of ahead of his times. He hired the first reoccurring African American character, and there's one scene in particular where they're soaking in a pool, and they're like, you know, they're soaking their feet in a pool, and so, you know, during a time where, you know, he had a show, and there still to this day obviously are incredibly huge issues around race, around equality. You know, racism was obviously huge during his time. It still is, but it was something you didn't see anybody do. And what he did after they soaked their feet in the pool is he actually got a towel and like dried his feet, which is, you know, he was a minister, and it was just like taking, you know, these principles that were authentic to him, you know, straight out of the Bible, and just living it out, you know, on TV for the world to see. So there were a lot of really cool things about what he did. It's you know, I just felt like it was a good introduction into the things that we would talk about in the rest of the book.
Yes, I really appreciated that as a Mr. Rogers fan. Rec TV has joined us too. I don't know who they are, but thank you for tuning in, Rec TV.
So Rec TV is Rick Lopez, and he's actually the guy who did the illustrations.
Oh,
Rick
that's
Lopez.
great. You know, I'm glad I brought him up because Rick, I mean, what a fascinating. Here, we're gonna have to spend another 5 minutes because, if I may, Carlos, show some of the illustrations. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'll show.
Oh, there you are.
Crazy talented artist. one of my favorite things about the book is that after every chapter, Rick really distills the key ideas in the book and into these illustrations as just a chapter summary. And he's a phenomenal artist, and he really just elevated the entire book. It's really, really cool to have him be a part of it.
Rick, you should contact Cliff Notes and see if you could do the same thing for for doing that for all books. I think that would be very helpful, because you read a chapter and then you see pretty much a recap in illustrative form. I mean, it was very helpful for someone like me who has adult ADD. So very nicely done, Rick. Very nicely done. We have a few more minutes, Carlos. I also want to bring up, we talked about positioning, and you speak about Nick and Graham. Tell us a little bit about why positioning is important and the influence of Nick and Graham Weston.
Yeah, so I'll try to tell that story in a real concise way. So Nick Longo and Graham Weston are the co-founders of Geekdom, which is a collaborative workspace downtown. And really what they were after was how can they build a tech scene and revitalize downtown. That's kind of what it was about. And how can we bring these people together who are used to maybe working in coffee shops or in their mom's basement or, from home offices, or, and how do we put them in one place and let them share ideas and build things together? And so it really stemmed from Graham's desire to recruit talent. He was the chairman of Rackspace at the time, and he knew that it was difficult to get people to come to San Antonio at that time because they didn't have the ecosystem as maybe in Austin or other places, around the country. And so this was sort of the start of what we now know as a really thriving tech scene downtown, and has resulted in millions and millions and millions of dollars of an investment. I think you could make the case that the investment that UTSA is making, that $70 million investment in putting a cybersecurity focused school downtown, maybe wouldn't have happened if this momentum wouldn't have been built. And another thing that they wanted to do was to create the next Rackspace, have people come together and build a company that would be one of the next really huge employers in the city. And the way that they went about it is just, when we talk about positioning, is they really just created the ecosystem and let the members be the hero instead of the guide. A lot of people think that when they're sharing their story, they're advertising their company, that they should position themselves as being the hero. Look how great we are. We have all these qualifications. We're better than any other organization that's out there. But really what your customer wants is they want to be the hero. And, if you think about storytelling, any great story, there's a hero. The hero comes across a problem, and then they meet a guide, and the guide helps them, solve that problem and eventually win the day, right? And Graham and Nick really, went through, and I point to like every principle that we talk about in the book and how they really sort of lived that out through how they did this. And they didn't make it about them. They made it about the ecosystem. And as a result, you have some of the most talented, smartest people that are in the city building things and solving problems. And now, recruiting companies to town that wouldn't have otherwise considered San Antonio as an option. And we're all better for it. I was one of the original members of Geekdom, and I can say that, I wouldn't be writing this book if it weren't for the work that they did. And my company's really benefited as a result of their investment and sort of seeing how they could, build something that would really outlive them.
True visionaries, right? I mean,
100%.
yeah, they're remarkable, remarkable individuals. I think the first project you and I worked on was at Rackspace when we did the workplace video, if I'm
Workplace
not mistaken.
mentoring.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as we're wrapping up, Carlos, I really appreciate you for taking time to talk about your book. This is the book. It's called Mommy Lied to Me. And notice I didn't talk about what that means because then we would be giving everything away. But
it's called Mommy Lied to God, Life Lessons About Living
Mommy Lied to
Storytelling.
God. That's right.
Yeah, it's okay. I did another interview and the reporter was like, your book, Why Mommy Lied to God. And I'm thinking, that's a whole nother book. Why She Lied to God, that's another interview. It's a whole nother story. But you'll find out in the book. You'll find out in the book why the book is titled that. It's in chapter 3. It's probably my favorite chapter of the book. I really think this book is for anybody who struggles to share their own story because maybe there are louder voices in the room, people who think that maybe their story isn't worthy, organizations that need to really raise a significant amount of money or move people in some way. That's why I wrote the book, and I really hope that it becomes a blessing for people who read it.
Well, I've seen a lot of positive reviews as far as people posting stuff on social media. So you're getting a lot of love, not only because you're a kind guy, but I think the book really resonates with people. I know it did with me. And frankly, I think as far as video production is concerned, as we know, a lot of people are going to do online galas. They're going to need some really good videos to go along with that. So I think having someone to put that together and produce it, to make sure that people are tuned in and making donations, you're going to need someone like Key Ideas to help that out. I know if once we're ready to do it, we're going to do it at the World Affairs Council. Let's see. Someone here says your stories have always been amazing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Who said that? Is that my mom? Did my mom log on? No, Chatarella. Thank you. I appreciate it.
People could get this on Amazon, and what form could they get it, and what's the best way, and all that? Could they get it at bookstores or at?
So bookstores have been kind of hard now. Really, the best place now is Amazon.com. Just look up "Mommy Lied to God" or my name, Carlos Maestas, Maestas. It's also on BarnesandNoble.com, and on Amazon the ebook's available too. You may catch me off of Highway 90 selling them out of the trunk of my car. So I have no shame.
You get a bag of oranges with the with
exactly.
one purchase.
You'll get a raspa and a book on storytelling.
Well, listen, man. Thank you again. I encourage everyone to check this out. Follow him on Instagram, InstaCarlos and Key Ideas, and message him for any questions. I really appreciate you sharing your personal stories and also telling us how to do it ourselves. I think it's really important as someone in the nonprofit world, but also as a human being to be able to share our stories. So thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And the work that you're doing is so important. You've dedicated your career to serving other people and really living out, building something that's going to be here after you're gone. And I'm sure that many of the folks that logged on here are connected to really important work too. So thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate the conversation. It's always fun talking to you.
I realized we didn't talk about the Basilica when you said that. So we'll keep everyone at bay so that they could go read about the Basilica and why it's important to leave a legacy. Thank you all for tuning in. Carlos, I hope everyone in San Antonio buys it, and I wish you the best, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Oh, and a quick shout out to Humans of SA. So thanks for
What's
tuning
up,
in.
Michael?
Looked up your. Oh, very good. You got a nice little shout out there at the end.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.